All right, so everybody that comes in is gonna see.
No
it's
problem.
Purgatory, that's what it is.
Missing
Oh,
it.
bingo is fun. You know it's
How
fun.
many more do we have?
Classes, this is number 5, so
Yeah.
8 minus 5.
They're tough.
Oh.
4. Oh, I actually had some fun with it.
Yeah.
There.
I actually had some. Present.
Hi, Andy.
humor.
Hello,
Try.
how are you? Rabbi,
Yes,
you be at the Lopators tonight?
Yes, of
they are
course.
tough.
Yeah.
They take it very.
Seven
I
o'clock.
have them on my
Very-
calendar.
service is 7.
They do.
Thing
This is
shows.
not a hobby, this is a serious, serious business.
Doreen's coming in. Hello, Doreen.
What serious business?
Bingo.
Oh,
They take their
Like
bingo
crazy.
very
Very
seriously.
We only had 87 people
Yeah.
last night.
So how many more do we have? I'm sorry.
Classes?
Yes,
three.
This is going upside
Now
down.
that, is that the
Yes,
4th,
there
the
is.
11th and the 18th? It must be.
So how's the boat?
Love it,
Yeah?
it's good.
How long you in for?
How long are you in for?
It sounds like she's in jail.
'Cause you're
Really?
tough, you know, obviously.
No, we're actually in the morning.
So the next 3 Thursdays, right?
What's that, I'm sorry?
I-
28, 21st, what's
Oh,
today?
okay.
You don't be in a dock.
21st, 28th, and the 4th.
Fucking all the.
Oh, wait a minute. I went too far ahead.
I mean,
Yeah.
trying to find something, everything sounds the same.
21st, the 28th,
And the 4th.
You tried private dogs.
January
and
4th?
the 4th. And you know what? The problem is.
No hat.
So when you go back, so
So the boat's up in Jensen Beach and we're gonna check on it on probably
84
Saturday
people
or
listening?
Sunday.
Yeah, Tevye is the
And
28th.
we're gonna
Yeah.
go back.
84 people.
Hi, how are you?
And then we go.
Yeah, 86 or
That's
7. Yeah, it is.
Tevye, you wouldn't
It's a
consider
bad
changing
thing.
one, would you?
When's that
Is
again?
it?
Tevye is on.
Oh, the 28th.
The 28th.
Well, we should, what time is it? Oh, that's right, I'm going too.
Yeah, it's 2 o'clock. We'll all
Me
make.
too.
Oh, who else is going?
Doreen's going,
How
right?
about doing it?
Yes.
I'm not.
That's hard for Rabbi.
Oh, she's having,
It's up to
so
you.
that morning I can't have any Mohs surgery in my nose.
That's the day?
Yeah, you listen to the surgery?
Well,
Could
come
we,
stand
could
around.
we not do it and extend it 1 week? I hate to miss.
No.
Maybe we'll then.
Yeah, cause a lot of us are going to.
Yeah, I think-
Maybe
a lot
I'm
of
better off anyway because I'm having the Mohs surgery that day.
On the 28th? It is the
8:30.
28th?
8:30 in the morning, so I'm done.
Oh, okay, no, but
Yeah,
Been there, done that
you too, huh?
Oh, but the 28th is.
a few times already.
Right, that's what
yeah,
I'm
and I
saying.
think a lot of people are going, but I don't know.
Okay,
about
so,
people on the
all right,
21st.
so I'm canceling
Class.
28th and we'll make it the 4th and the 11th.
Oh, I love you.
you're
Thank you.
canceling
28th.
Okay. I didn't want to miss it.
nothing before
I
that.
Gosh, I didn't even
Yeah.
think about that. Even Eric is going
No,
to
I mean,
Tevye.
there's no
Oh, so there
cancellation.
you go.
Correct.
Is he? Oh, that's nice. I
So-
tried to get
So
Robert to
next
go. He
week
said,
and then
"Nah,
1 week off. And
I didn't,
also
can't
you
go
might.
I didn't
Yeah.
even ask him, and all of a sudden he said, how come you didn't sign me up?
Well,
You wanna go? I
I-
mean,
I think it's probably gonna be very good.
I'm sure
Have
it
you heard
will.
anything
Okay.
about
I
it?
think we'll do-
I heard that the gentleman that does it is very, very talented.
Yeah,
I
okay.
didn't know much else.
Okay, so cross
We know
out
it's
the-
not a musical, that's all I know.
No, 28 is.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was like a
Alan,
one-man
I was
thing.
doing-
Right, I mean, it may not be what everybody expects, but I think it'll still be good.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I can't, I'm going.
We shall see.
You think?
I figured it would be good for
Did you,
you.
did you
Yeah,
sign
it's
up for
good.
lunch?
Yeah,
You did.
what much? Yeah,
The
For
Tevye
Tevye.
is the 20,
yeah, the box lunch.
the 28th of December. We're all going.
So you.
I'm not coming.
The 4th and the 11th?
Yes.
This is okay.
I know, that's
Yes.
what I'm saying.
Lila, you answered my email today that I sent on the 29th about the class on the November 30th.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you got the link at least.
All right,
You
so
don't
we have-
need it, but, oh.
Rabbi, we have to send an
Meeting
email out to
Lolita,
whoever's in,
Yeah, Betty does these things.
I does these
you will
things.
do it. Okay.
Let me,
It pops up my
A
phone.
lot of people.
She doesn't believe my phone. It
Well,
pops
some people aren't,
crazy
two aren't.
things.
just have to
pop up on my
remind
phone.
myself.
Some died,
So I can't get.
another person's showing up,
I'm-
another person's showing up.
How are you?
Hi,
The
Hebrew school.
Hi
Oh,
there.
am I picking?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hi, how are you?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
Once every,
Am I picking you both
I
up?
think,
yeah.
hour and a
Okay,
half.
so here's what
Rabbi
I'm gonna
says
do.
something,
I think
jot
we'll
down.
talk.
Eddie,
But
Yes,
who's Lolita?
We're all going
Sorry?
to-
Who's Lolita?
a bump of lunch.
she's
So-
a student
me.
of the class.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I think it's a good idea.
Hi, Lolita.
Okay,
How are you?
so,
So
Did you bring a book?
12:15.
It is
Yeah.
time.
Doris
Why
has
don't
my
we do-
book.
yeah,
Sheila, you have your
12:15,
book?
I'll make
Yeah,
a-
you do.
I'm putting
I
it
read
in
the
the
whole
calendar.
book because I
Oh,
didn't know
good.
which the assigned
And
pages.
I'll
were.
Oh, she's
my-
that
I
kid.
gave it to her.
She's that kid.
All right,
Very
you
good.
got 12:15.
I brought the other book.
You know, that'll give
Okay,
us.
it's 3 o'clock. School is
Okay.
in session.
Yeah.
That's the only one I highlight.
Get there.
Oh, I
And then-
Laura,
Oh,
is
yeah,
Doris
I-
here?
No, she is at the doctor.
Oh, okay.
Right,
so-
you figure it is.
12 o'clock.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Laurie, put her in 12 o'clock.
I'm gonna move away.
Okay,
so
let's
you
go.
can have
Okay.
the- Up at 12.
Thank you.
Okay,
No problem.
I'll be over here.
Lolita, Lulu.
How are you?
You have, but
How are you, Rabbi? I'm
You have
good.
to call me. We have to get together. We have to-
Yes,
We have to stop seeing
yes.
each other like this.
I am gonna I'm gonna go to the temple on Saturday.
Everyone's here. Larry, of course, is not here because he's sitting shiva.
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, otherwise, it's a group that's.
I guess I'll see you later too.
Yeah. Okay. What I like about this book, let us turn for a moment to page 33.
Which
Uh,
is- oh, which-
This book here, this one, just for a second, the one you
I
didn't
did
get, okay,
not.
but for those of you who got it. What's nice about this book, on page 33,
I bought-
they also have the actual blessings for things, which is nice. So it really helps one to live, how to live the life. It's not just reading something. And the various brachot are throughout the book. For the holidays, we'll look at some of them. Okay, so anyway, one of the things that is discussed in the second book, which we're going to start looking at next week. This is a very abridged class. Okay, we're going. There's a whole section on mitzvah and what a mitzvah is. A mitzvah. How would you translate it? What would you say in mitzvah? In English? Commandment. Okay. So therefore, it's not a suggestion, as some people think. Okay. But certainly in Reform, we could see that some of them as suggestions. You could do them, you don't do them, whatever. However, the word mitzvah, if you translate it as commandment, means that there must be someone who is commanding you, because a commandment has to have a commander. Okay, so the commander, of course, in traditional Judaism is obviously. Oh, Larry's here too. Good. Come on, Larry. It's still raining, Larry? Maybe.
I don't know.
It's true.
I'm very confused by the wind and the cold and.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you must have a commander. In traditional Judaism, the commander is God. And this, of course, with this kind of an idea, immediately sets up the following system. Just like, let's take the Navy, okay? Your commander, and that's a rank in the Navy, I found out. One of the members up north, he was a captain in the Navy, and he was promoted. And I thought for sure he said Commodore. So I kept on calling him a Commodore, but he said a Commodore is a person who is in charge of a boat and a yacht. He's like, no, I'm not a Commodore, I'm a commander now, which is actually a very high rank in the Navy. And he retired from that as a commander. And he invited me to offer the prayer at his retirement ceremony. And it was very, very impressive. Actually, he was a commander for logistics, which means basically how things get from one place to another for the entire Mediterranean area, at one time under NATO, and later on in the Middle East, in the Far East, rather. So he had quite a distinguished career. It was very, very impressive. But obviously, let us say I'm in the Navy, God forbid, and my commander says to me, swab the deck. And I don't want to swab the deck. I say, nah, I want to read a book today. Guess what? I'll end up in the brink.
Walk the drink.
Yeah, they had the plank. And the plank guys like, the brink. So,
Years ago.
whatever the thing is. Okay, walk the plank. In other words, I'm going to be disobeying an order, and therefore I'm going to be what? Punished. Okay. So in the traditional Jewish system, whether this is something you buy into or not, the traditional Jewish system is very, very clear going back to the Bible, and certainly through the rabbinic period and later on, and in traditional Judaism to this very day. And we sort of allude to it when we on Yom Kippur, for the sin I've sinned against you, you're committing a sin. And thereby there is a system of rewards and punishments. There are some people, of course, who will say, well, God can't operate this way. This doesn't make any sense, to me anyway. But on the other hand, traditional Judaism, this is the operative system. And there are, therefore, 613 mitzvot or commandments. There are not just 10. And you can, and I mentioned this before, you can find all of them. And actually, back in New York, I have this Hebrew book, which as it goes through the Torah portion for the week, it actually identifies which mitzvot are in each Torah portion. So you can find every single one of them somewhere on a verse in the Torah, at least partially, not always directly. And some of them are a bit a stretch, to say the least. So for instance, in the laws of kashrut, keeping kosher, certainly one of the aspects of keeping kosher is the mitzvah, is that you shall not mix milk and meat. Now, where do the rabbis say that comes from in the Torah? I think it's in the book of Numbers, where it says that you shall not seethe, meaning take a kid, while a baby goat, while it's weaning from its mother. And because it uses the word idea of nursing and thereby milk, and you're not supposed to mix, keep the two together, is that it says it's forbidden to mix milk and meat. Nowhere in the Torah does it say thou shalt not have a cheeseburger.
What in the Bible it says to get to?
You shall not seethe a kid in its mother's milk. Okay.
So you shouldn't take the baby.
Because the negative, you shall not take the baby, but it says a negative, and therefore not mixing milk and meat is also you shall not mix milk and meat.
Oh,
That's a
interesting.
huge
But
stretch.
it's a stretch. They couldn't
That's-
find that. Now, I guess I could ramble on, okay, and digress from the topic of today in terms of kashrut. If you were to, go into Boca, and where there is certainly a large traditional Jewish population, and actually over here, where I am in Boynton Beach, if it's ever open, but I guess maybe in a couple of months from now, it's finally going to be open. There's going to actually be a kosher supermarket with kosher restaurants inside of it.
Open like at the end of this month.
And no, forget about it. Okay, it's going to be a lot longer.
That's
than that.
Jewish.
Yeah, Jewish building construction, Florida construction type,
Right,
actually.
yeah.
The way things construction is in Florida. But anyway, is that there are those, of course, who keep being very observant in the laws of kashrut, and are very, very,
I don't have my hearing aids in or I'm not.
and the laws are extraordinarily complicated.
It's my Bluetooth.
But just to point out, there are laws and mitzvot that are stated in the Torah exactly. There are laws. Oh, hi, Larry. Oh, nice to see you. There are laws stated specifically in the Torah, and thereby they are laws from the Torah. But then there are laws that were created by the rabbis later on, and there is a very large distinction between them. So, in the Torah, in the Bible, the only thing it says about eating food at all is found twice, actually. I think it's Leviticus and also in Numbers. And that is a list of those animals to be eaten or not to be eaten. And so an animal that
Even was a lot of shine, SHINED.
I muted them.
You mute everybody?
Maybe I'm muted.
Oh, it is now. In which it has cloven hoofs and chews its own cud. So to give an example, that's obviously a cow. A cow has two stomachs. And I hate to say this because you never want to eat meat again, but it actually throws up its own food, then brings it back. Ugh, God.
Good to know.
Okay, it's really gross. Okay. Anyway, that becomes kosher. And obviously a pig, for instance, has cloven hoofs, but it doesn't chew its own cud, so therefore it's not a kosher animal. And then it describes the fish. So obviously, it has to have fins and scales. So lobster, shrimp, etc., is not included because they don't have fins and scales. Now, you could say, well, how did this whole thing come about? And by the way, that's the only thing it says in the Torah. The animals and birds, etc., goes through birds and reptiles and everything, what you can eat and what not to eat. It does not say kosher kill of animals in the Torah. And it says nothing directly about mixing milk and meat in the Torah. These were created later on by the rabbis, adding more to all of this. What does this all mean and what's its purpose? Many people have said, well, it's for health reasons, because in ancient times, let us say if you were to find clams or something and cook them, there's a high possibility of getting, hepatitis, trichinosis. The other way,
No, that's
hepatitis.
big.
Right, by not being able to cook these things properly, you couldn't get things hot enough all the time. And so therefore stay away. And the same thing with pig, you can get trichinosis, because it could not be cooked properly. The same way as mixing milk and meat. After all, in ancient times, most of the dishes and bowls and stuff were obviously clay, and clay untreated and not coated with anything like today we have, absorbs the material of the meat, of the food. So that therefore, if you were to eat meat, obviously part of the blood or the meat, or whatever it is, gets into the bowl, and then 5 minutes later you put milk in there and you drink it. There's going to be some mixing of these two things, and obviously also in a non-air conditioned climate like we have today here, etc., in a very warm Mediterranean climate, the possibilities of getting sick from this kind of thing were probably high. And so therefore there are those Jews today who say, see, I don't have to keep kosher because we have no problem with any of these things. Okay, we certainly can cook pork enough, we can cook clams enough, and not going to most likely not get sick. You still can get sick, obviously. And in terms of bowls and pottery and dishes, they're made very, very differently. Maimonides clarified this whole thing. I mentioned Maimonides briefly during the history discussion, the great Spanish rabbi from the 11th century. And he, in a wonderful, incredible book of his called Sefer HaMitzvot, the Book of the Mitzvahs, in which he actually went through all 613 commandments, and actually stated what the rational reason for doing them is. A couple of them, he said he can't find any rational reason. Some of them you simply do them because you are commanded to. So in other words, I might not think it's necessary to swab the deck on the ship, but if the commander says do it, guess what? I can say, no, I'm not, but I can't. I'm just going to do it because he said to do it. There are a couple of commandments like that. However, he stated specifically, and remember, he was also a practicing physician. So he was aware of health and unhealth, and he said specifically, there's only one reason for keeping kosher, and that is keeping Jews separate from non-Jews. It keeps our tribe together. Because after all, if you can't eat with a non-Jew, you ain't going to date a non-Jew, and you ain't going to marry a non-Jew, etc., etc. And that was his statement. So there are different levels thereby for keeping kosher. And within a reform context, putting it that way and moving kind of very quickly through all of this, is that one could say, why should I keep, as a Reform Jew, why should I keep, as a modern Jew, why should I keep kosher? Number one is obviously, I don't have to worry about the health aspect. And by the way, anyone who says to you, oh, in ancient times, God did this because to keep Jews healthy, because of the danger of eating these things. Let me tell you, they had no concept of scientific method in those days. It's not as if all of a sudden Moses said, okay, let me, 5 Hebrews here, 5 Hebrews here. We're going to give these guys lobster. We're going to give these guys a fish with fins and scales. We'll see who lives and who dies. There was no scientific method. They didn't do experimentation. They had no idea. The health thing is only a reason to not keep kosher. Understand? Okay.
Rabbi, I have a ritual question about keeping kosher, and oops, I have to kashrut this plate again, so I'm going to bury it in the dirt in the backyard. I've read 30 days. I've read 90 days. I listened to a group of Long Island Chabad rabbis last week.
Never believe them.
And what was interesting, the senior rabbi said to the others, stick it in the dirt, make sure it's dirty, and take it right out. Never heard that one before. So it was like, let's do it, but let's do it conveniently. So
So-
that really surprised me.
Well, I've said this before, all Jews are really reformed, they just don't want to admit it.
But in
They make-
our tradition with the Orthodox,
Yeah,
it's not stick it in the dirt and.
no, there must be
rinse it
more
off.
to it, right, yeah, yeah. Well, but even, there's an example of even Chabad is changing within certain parameters, okay? You can't just do anything you want to do, but within certain parameters. So let me go back now to this whole idea of, for a modern Reformed Jew, for all of us here. Huh?
I just have a question on it. I thought certain animals, certain fish, there was a reason that not to eat it. And I said, well, as long as there's a reason, I can identify with it. I can't identify with just don't eat it because don't eat it. And like there were fish that were bottom feeders. There were pigs that eat garbage. I mean, I can understand all that. And I agree with it. You know, it's not the healthiest thing. So that's not a reason? Or what?
Well, it could be a reason. If it's a reason for you, then it's a reason. And it's actually more of a reason not to keep kosher. Because actually, I have been told that pigs are actually very clean animals, I was told.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was told. I don't know any pigs. I do know some, actually, I do know some
Spoken
pigs,
to
but
them,
they give us.
actually. Got it.
Okay, so,
Okay.
fine.
Oh.
Where do we then fit in? And I'm going to give you an example because now you're learning that Judaism, and I stated this from the very beginning, is an evolving religion. So in the Bible, in ancient times, was only the animals and things to eat or not eat, for whatever reason. Later on, they added kosher kill of animals, and then also not mixing milk and meat. So there's an evolution of this process. It wasn't all created at one time. There are Reformed Jews who keep only biblical kosher. In other words, similar to what Hannah's saying, they won't eat bacon and they won't go and eat seafood, okay? Why? It might be because they were brought up that way, or it might be they study the laws and traditions and this somehow makes them feel more Jewish or makes some sense to them, as Hannah was saying, in terms of the reasons. But I'll give you a story. One of my teachers in rabbinical school, Rabbi Eugene Borowitz, he should rest in peace. And he was one of the great theologians of the 20th century and Reformed theologians. And he told the following story. Many, many decades ago, he found himself, did a lot of lecturing. So he found himself in Texas or somewhere out west, and he was sitting alone in a restaurant, and he was looking at the menu, and lo and behold, they had bison burgers on the menu, okay? Some of you might have had bison, okay? And they're very good, actually, I like that. Less fat in a bison burger than in a beef burger. So anyway, he looked at he said, oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll have it. And Rabbi Borowitz kept biblical kosher, not rabbinic kosher. So waiter comes over, he orders it. The waiter's gone, but then he begins to say to himself, well, is a bison a kosher animal or not? So he's trying to picture this. By the way, there's no such animal as a buffalo. The buffaloes do not exist. They're all bison. I learned that when he went to Yellowstone National Park. Okay. So anyway, he's trying to picture this bison / buffalo. Does it chew its cud? Does it have cloven hooves? He's trying to figure that out. He doesn't know. So he calls over the waiter back and says, I'd like to cancel my order and I'll have something else. Tuna fish, whatever. And the waiter says, but I just put the order in. And the way it works in this restaurant, if you cancel, then I'm going to have to pay for the first meal. And the second one, of course, you're going to pay for. I'm going to be charged as the wait staff for the first meal that you're canceling. So Rabbi Borowitz said to himself, well, ethics overrides kashrut. I can't make this man pay for it. I'll eat it. And if it's not kosher, so be it. I'll put that aside. Okay. Turned out to be that a bison is a kosher animal. Yeah. So you can have bison burgers and.
No, I just had to say one thing. I have a friend and she kept kosher. And she would like to bring Chinese food in, but that would be all right as long as she put it on a paper plate.
Oh, okay.
And that just
Yeah.
absolutely killed me.
You know,
And
there's
I
three
said,
sets of dishes.
Is it you
Nope.
that's kosher or is it the table that's, kosher? I mean, what is this all about?
Well, as a reform, as a modern Jew, you can take all of this as Rabbi Borowitz did and begin to say to yourself, what does all this mean? And to me, there are only two kinds of Jews, actually only two kinds of human beings. There's the ones who are serious and the ones who are not serious. A serious Jew is someone who studies the sources, studies the history, and then makes their own decision. Because remember, unfortunately, I didn't have a board to write it on. There are 3 different levels of dealing with nomi or halakha or law or mitzvot. One is theonomy. God said it. Theonomy, theo, God, nomi, law. The law is God founded, and I do it. And if God says it, I got to do it. I have no choice. I can't say, God, I don't feel like swabbing the deck. Okay, it doesn't work that way. God says that I have no choice. The lowest way, the third bottom way, is autonomous. I do whatever the hell I want. Oh, sorry. Okay. I say whatever the hell I do whatever I want to do. Anytime I want to do it, it doesn't matter. Okay. What's the difference? I'm a free, autonomous human being. No one can tell me what to do, except Lynn and Betty, of course, but okay. No one can tell me what to do.
I forgot
And
Judy.
Judy also, that's right, yeah, she's on the top of
Yeah.
she's on the top of the pole.
Better not let-
She's on the top of the totem pole. No one can.
Okay, Judy.
But guess what? It's actually the in-between, which is hegemony or heteronomy, like heterosexual, meaning both. In other words, it's a little bit of God speaking to me, but I also have the choice myself as an autonomous human being that God has given me free will to make those decisions. And similar to the story that Lynn just said, obviously some group or whatever, I don't think it's Rabbi Teldon, I'm sure it's Tuvia Teldon who spoke. I assume so. Was he's had a Chabad for all of Long Island, didn't make that up and said, well, just put in the dirt and then pull it back up. There must be some kind of, somewhere in the books of Jewish law, it says that's acceptable, because there are all of these variations and opinions, and you can find the one that means something to you. So to now talk about myself and Judy. When we first got married, we had a kosher apartment. We lived in Brooklyn, Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, for those of you who know Brooklyn. 1650 Ocean Parkway. Our first 7 years of marriage, and we had a kosher home. We bought kosher meat, and we did the kosher in Brooklyn. That's very easy to keep kosher. And in those days, it wasn't overly expensive, although it was definitely more expensive, unfortunately, than other types of food. And we felt really good about that. So yes, we did have 2 sets of dishes. Outside of the house, we didn't keep fully kosher by any means. In my mind, there's certain things I felt comfortable eating and not. But I wasn't ready to take that next step of having nothing to do with our parents and never eating in their homes or forcing them to change their lives upside down. My father, he should rest in peace, was known for his lobster clam bakes where we grew up in Bell Harbor. And people loved when he would, on a Sunday in the summertime, he would go over to Brooklyn and buy 20 lobsters and invite everyone over. And with that and some a gin and tonic, and we had parties and clam bakes. Yeah, he was known for them. Well, I can't say to my father, I'm not gonna. I didn't want to separate ourselves from our family. There are those who do. Okay, there are people, children
Usually
who do
it's the
that.
other way around.
Yeah, there are, or it could be. So we weren't prepared to do that. So outside we did not keep kosher, but in our house we made our house a Jewish house, just like the mezuzah on the door. We also had 2 sets of dishes, actually 4 sets of dishes, because we also have for Passover, milk and dairy. And thereby, the point is this: what does it mean to live as a Jew? You see the world through Jewish eyes. So in the morning when I have my yoga and stuff, I have to go toward the dairy part of the silverware drawer. And then at night I have to go, depending upon what we have for dinner, the milk, the flesh, the meat part of the dishes and everything else. Flesh stick, right. So I'm doing something as a Jew. One of the things that definitely affected us, however, made me realize you have to live your life as you see fit and not live it for other people. Is that we have a very, very, very Orthodox friend. We had someone then, and we invited this person over for dinner. And we had a kosher home. We spent all this money on all the dishes and the food and whatever. And she then said to us, well, do you have 2 beds? And I said to her, no, because an Orthodox way, a traditional Jewish way of life, they follow what's called Tahara Mishpacha, which means family purity. And 7 months of the year in traditional Judaism, a woman is considered to be unclean because of menstruation. So she and her husband have to sleep in 2 separate beds. Well, we didn't do that. I wasn't brought up Orthodox, to say the least. My dad made lobster bakes. So certainly wasn't brought up Orthodox. And we said no. So she said, well, I can't eat in your house. Because if you don't follow that law, then how do I know you have any idea what is to keep
Oh,
kosher?
God, there's so much to
So,
it.
so then we realized we have to do what's meaningful for us, and that's where it's at. So I say to you, what does it all mean, kashrut? Going back to Maimonides' statement that the real reason for keeping kosher is it keeps Jews together. Judy and I keep kosher because it creates a Jewish feeling in our home. And obviously, if we have people over for dinner or just for snacks or whatever, and they come into the kitchen, they say to Judy, "Oh, I want what plates can I help to bring out to have?" Judy has to tell you, just don't open a cabinet and take something because it might be the wrong set of dishes. You have to think as a Jew when you're in our house. So the same thing with any of you. If you keep kosher, that's fine. If you think of saying, "Well, maybe I will," what is the point of it? It really creates a mindset, just like that mezuzah on the door. It really takes you. You're in a different world. Because one thing is for sure, even in beautiful South Florida, okay, Southeast Florida, we're surrounded by an incredible Jewish community. Guess what? We're still surrounded by non-Jews. I'm not gonna use the word with a G. This is a non-Jewish world. This is a Gentile, that's the other G, okay. This is a Gentile world in which we live in.
Rabbi, when I was reading, it was interesting. I actually enjoyed, for the most part, reading the text. But a part that I haven't resolved in my own mind, and when I listened to you talk too, is the one thing that kept coming around and around was that thing that you're talking about, the fear of assimilation. And that seemed to be under the meaning the overriding motivation for a lot of things. And me personally, I'm not sure how I feel about that. No, I don't want to. I'm Jewish and I practice, I do it my way, and I don't want to feel like, well, I'm doing it because I don't know what that fear is. In other words, Kath, my wife is not Jewish. We practice. She celebrates the holidays with me. She lights the candles and everything. And I didn't have the fear when I got married to her that, well, I'm going to lose my Judaism. And I understand the history a little bit. I'm not you. I'm not pretending. But I think that fear, and it is a fear, that somehow Judaism is going to go away or it's going to be minimized. And I haven't reconciled that.
But you have that fear within somewhere inside of you. There's that feeling
that
you don't want to see it disappear.
Of course, I don't want to see it disappear, and I know I practice, and I know it's not disappearing, even though I'm married and non-Jew. It's not. I'm not Orthodox, but I still carry on Judaism, and I still participate to a degree. And Kat does tzedakah at the synagogue and has been doing it for years.
I think that's what everybody wants to hear.
But
That you don't give up your religion, even though you're married to
well,
someone.
but
it doesn't happen in all.
correct. But I think
marriages.
I don't want to say sad, but I am thinking sad that's an overriding.
A big one.
You want to see? Well, it is. Well, it is let's fear or concern that, especially in the modern Jewish community, you look at ours, and then you go to, let's say, the Chabad community. Well, we don't Satmar and whatever too much down here, but you go to any of these Chabad, and they're identified as Jews. Most of us here, if we were walking down the street, most probably no one would. Well, probably some of us do look Jewish, whatever that exactly means, okay? But the fact is, there is a concern that Judaism would disappear, this precious thing that we have, and you want to hold on to it.
Sorry. I was going to say also, we've lost so many Jews. We've lost hundreds of thousands of Jews.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And we had no power not to lose all these people. So every time they see a person intermarry, that person can take over the other person's religion. Yours, it didn't happen. My kids are all married to non-Jews. They still light the menorah next to the Christmas tree. I'm glad that they do that. My son sent me a picture of a beautiful Christmas tree and he said, what do you think, Ma? I said, I think it's beautiful. Did you light your menorah? And they showed me a picture of the menorah.
So still
So, I
there.
mean, if we could keep it alive like you're keeping it alive, then, there's less of a fear. But to me, we can't help intermarriage. It's gonna happen, and we can try to instill in our kids that they keep some of the religion. I have another son. He's got a name Klingsberg. They gotta know he's Jewish, right? You can't hide it, but he doesn't practice at all.
One would hope in this whole thing, one would hope is that the person who's getting, an intermarriage, okay? That person already has the strength and the importance of Judaism.
But how do they get it? And this is where,
And
but
that's-
unfortunately, and I think we're seeing this in part in what's happening on these college campuses today, and that is a lack of real feeling about what it is to be a Jew, and to feel strongly about being Jewish. And to me, how you can have Jewish college students standing with Palestinians condemning Israel in the way that they are is just I just don't agree. I don't understand that. I don't accept it. There's something happened in the education process from the parents as well as any religious institutions that are educating these kids. Yeah, Aline, you hardly have that.
No pride.
No.
Going back to Rabbi's initial presentation when we began this, Jewish peoplehood and Jewish identity is not something you learn or you're taught in quote Hebrew school. It is somewhat different, and a sense of Jewish identity and who you are individually, or who any of us are individually, and our needs within a small Jewish group or a large Jewish group. Those things are not taught in the generations before us in Hebrew school. The whole notion of Judaism as a civilization that Rabbi talked about with Rabbi Kaplan when he wrote his text in the 1930s and 40s is something that helps instill in us beyond, well, my next may not be Jewish, but I'm going to keep my Judaism, or my kids or my grandkids. So my Catholic granddaughter is going to say, what's a menorah? Can I light it too? Because my best friend is. Is lighting a menorah really a commitment to Judaism, or I'm doing it because my best friend is? Those are the kinds of things that we might choose to ask our children and grandchildren, but probably won't in some way. And Rabbi knows that I feel strongly about Judaism as a civilization, and some of the text that Rabbi Kaplan wrote, not all of it, but in looking at the fear of assimilation, we're not alone. Who wrote the lyrics and the melody for Rita Moreno in West Side Story? Stick to your own kind. The Jewish people are not alone in that one phrase from that wonderful theater production. She was saying, stick to your own kind, you're Puerto Rican.
Wasn't that also why Fiddler on the Roof is so appreciated by all, not just Jews, because it's a story of assimilation.
Yeah.
His children, the girls, they're all assimilating, and he feels the falling
loses
apart
plot,
of
right.
his
They-
tradition is falling apart. Tradition.
When
And
the
he's-
second daughter,
Yeah.
you go, how much, no, when he's talking about the thing, he goes, how much more, I'm breaking, the first one, okay, it wasn't arranged marriage. The second one, married a non-Jew, and he's like,
The third one married a
so
non-Jew.
what was the first? The first
No,
one was.
the first one-
The communist, there's a communist thing. But it doesn't matter, but the idea is,
yes, I'm breaking, how much more? He's like, I'm trying, and then I'm trying to be modern, and I'm trying to, be with the times and help my children stay Jewish, but I'm gonna break.
And this has happened before. Maimonides wrote the Guide for the Perplexed because we're losing Jews to Aristotelian philosophy. And so these things have happened many times. Yehuda Halevi wrote the book called the Kuzari because we were losing Jews to Islam and Christianity. So time and Reform Judaism came about because we were losing Jews once the ghettos were open to Christianity. So we've always been fighting against the loss of our tribe. Larry.
That's exactly my point. 5,000 years, how many times have they tried to destroy us? We have a culture, whether we go into Hebrew school or not. We have a culture, it's in us. There's no way to destroy it. So I'm the optimist. Yeah, we have concerns, but I believe we're gonna thrive and be strong forever.
Yeah. There's this woman, 80 years old, who came to me, and when she married her Catholic husband, Judaism didn't mean very much to her, and so she converted to Catholicism, and they raised 2 or 3 kids as Catholics and all of that. And she's 80-something years old, and she came to me, and she said to me, she wants to reaffirm her Judaism before she dies, so she can feel comfortable being buried in a Jewish cemetery. And I said to her, well, why? And she said, well, it's not that I did the wrong thing my whole life, but I can't help but feel that I was a Jew when I was born, and I want to die as a Jew because that's who really I am. Wow. And so I took her, basically I did a version of a conversion class for her to remind her of it all. And we had a ceremony giving her Hebrew name again and affirming her Judaism.
Well, for me, based on everything, if you put everything together, that's why I get really particularly angry. And angry is the correct word. When you know that you have the extreme Orthodox, right? That for Jews of Reform, we're not Jews. So within our own religion, there is a lack of respect and sensitivity. And you're right, the numbers are small enough, and yet there's no empathy, no sensitivity to, if it's not exactly the way you practice Judaism, you're not a Jew. And it's sad, and it's very sad.
Most definitely. But first of all, it's not all. I mean, for instance, if you were to go into one of the Chabad synagogues here on a Saturday morning, they wouldn't question you at all. Take a talit and daven, pray there. I mean, they would throw you out. They don't ask you, are you Reform or conservative? Certain situations, yeah, some of them might espouse certain things and say certain things, but they're not all that way, obviously. But yeah, some of them, unfortunately, really do a disservice to the Jewish people. And interestingly enough, they actually do a disservice to their rabbis, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who preached that we are all one people, time and time again. Yeah. But no, good. No, this is a good discussion.
Because we came from Rockland County, and they had about 10 sects of Jews there.
Oh, yes.
And one couldn't stand the other because they weren't.
Right, because they're interpreting it differently. Yeah. Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, there are all these differences to say that it's like the old joke. You have 2 Jews, you have 3 synagogues or something. Right. I always need one to be able to go to if I don't agree or something with some joke. Right, yeah. Anyway, Hannah.
I was just thinking, my parents kept kosher when they first were married. And then they had to make a living, naturally. My mother worked, my father worked. And my father is a meat cutter. And he went to work in a chain like Publix, one of these non-kosher. And he started bringing home food, naturally, because he was allowed to do that. So they stopped keeping kosher. I think a lot of it is being an American sometimes has a lot more to do with being Jewish than not being Jewish.
Of course.
Because people have to focus on survival,
Making a living,
and so the Jewishness sometimes gets put on the back burner. I didn't have Jewish training. I mean, I just didn't. And I wanted to go to Hebrew school, but girls didn't go to Hebrew school. And I had no Jewish training until I decided as a little older that I'm a Jew and I want to be Jewish.
So you have to know.
Sometimes later rather than earlier.
Well, let's take all of this discussion now and look at the idea of the Sabbath, okay, Shabbat. And that was, of course, one of the chapters in the book. The Sabbath is probably one of the most important of all of the days, or certainly it's the most important day of the week. And certainly if you read any of these books on Jewish law and tradition, etc., the Sabbath gets the most attention almost out of all of them. Obviously, for an Orthodox way of life, observing the Shabbat is a very, very restrictive situation. You can't do this, you can't do that, okay? But on the other hand, for the Orthodox Jew, they understand the restrictions are so that you appreciate the day and block out everything else. And it teaches you really the values of life. Obviously, for the modern Jew, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. We were with friends a couple of years ago out in California. This friend's, I think, son-in-law, I think it was, he travels on Shabbat, but he wanted to observe Shabbat in a certain way. So he would not carry his cell phone with him on Shabbat. So he wouldn't be bothered by that. And that was his observance of Shabbat. Well, obviously no Orthodox rabbi would accept that as being observance. However, got him into a lot of trouble actually, because he does drive on Shabbat, and he and his family were at the Hollywood Bowl on Shabbat, and their car broke down and he couldn't have a phone to call anybody. So that was a whole other story.
God punished them.
Right.
Yeah. But the fact is that there are all of these restrictions, but what is Shabbat all about? It's supposed to be a day on which we refresh, the nafash, as we say in the Hebrew, in the song V'Shamru, the nafash. And so it's a day in which we are supposed to reorient ourselves to understand what's really important in life. And is it all about shopping? Is it all about running around? Is it all about these kinds of things? And as Reform Jews, no, we're not going to restrict ourselves in all these kinds of things. But let me give you an example. On Friday night, there's absolutely nothing wrong with lighting Shabbat candles and making Kiddush at home and then coming to temple, okay? And certainly within Reform context, and Judy and I did this for years, is you light the candles, and then you blow the candles out if you don't feel comfortable leaving it home lit, and then you relight them when you get home after temple, okay? There was one week I was still lighting my candles Tuesday night because I kept on blowing them off. Because Judy didn't want to keep them on while we're sleeping either. So we constantly lighting them off. It was nuts. But anyway, the fact is, it was nothing wrong with that, because you're, again, similar to kashrut. Mentally, you are trying to evaluate your life and finding that track that makes sense to you. So let's look at 3 of the main Jewish holidays of the year. And I say main because Passover in the spring, and then 8 weeks later, Shavuot, and then in the fall, Sukkot, are the 3 Chagim or holidays of the year. Last week I mentioned that specifically Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are holy days. They first of all are totally unrelated to the ancient agricultural calendar. Remember, Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the 7th month of the year when we change over the calendar year. However, they are more of a spiritual and intellectual, moral, ethical orientation. Whereas Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot are, number 1, tied in with nature and the seasons of the year, and 2, are tied in with our history. So let's take Pesach. Again, you can go crazy with all of the restrictions of Passover. What to eat, what not to eat, and all of these things. And obviously, that would be a class unto itself, how to observe Passover. But obviously, the point of Passover is, number 1, you're observing the ancient agricultural season beginning, the springtime harvest. That's number 1. But the other is the historical event of what? The Pesach, or the Exodus from Egypt. All of this is captured in a marvelous way in the great literary creation called the Haggadah or Haggadah. Okay, the Haggadah, the Hebrew word Haggadah means to tell, and this would be a class unto itself to discuss the Haggadah and to go through all of it and the meanings of it, etc. Maybe we'll do that in the spring. It is an incredible literary masterpiece because the rabbis were true teachers. They understood what it is to teach a lesson, a simple idea of the movement from slavery to freedom. So you have what? You have foods, but you just don't display the foods, you taste them. This one tastes sour, slavery. This one tastes sweet, freedom. Okay. You have songs, whatever, the prayer songs, and then you have Chagajah, singing is very important. And then obviously movement and doing things, playing games, the Afikomen. You're constantly engaging both the adults and the children in this marvelous way. The Haggadah itself makes no sense at all. There's no logical placement of the various prayers and whatnot of the 14 parts of the Seder ritual. Yeah, yeah. However, the fact is they all come together to talk about what? Moving from freedom to slavery. Slavery to freedom, right. So then, 8 weeks later, you have the holiday of Shavuot, which is kind of the later part of the springtime harvest. But remember, during those there are 49 days between the two holidays, and this is called the counting of the Omer. Again, this is agricultural. In ancient times, our ancestors brought an Omer, a handful of grain, to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, giving thanks to God for the springtime, for the harvest. So each day they would do a counting of the Omer, and we today offer a special prayer and a special spiritual meditation for that. The holiday of Shavuot celebrates the latter springtime harvest, but also does what? It also celebrates the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. So you see the progression. And again, everything has multiple layers to it. The rabbi said, particularly one rabbi, his name was Akiva, he said that there are 4 levels of interpretation of all of Jewish life, existence, Torah, holidays, history, everything. And he related it to a Hebrew word, pardes, or paradise. The 4 Hebrew letters of the word paradise, pardes, are pei, resh, dalid, and shin. Okay, no, sod, samech. Okay. And so the pei is for the Hebrew word pashat, which means the simple meaning. That's what it is. That's what it says. The resh is remez. What is hinted at to help us to understand the underlying meaning of this event. And then what? Pardes, the dalid, is the drash, which means the ethical or moral teaching. The last level, or the highest one, the samech, is the Hebrew word sod, which means the mystical connections to the infinite within our rituals and ceremonies. There are 4 levels of meaning to everything. So let's take, for instance, the following holiday, the holiday which we're celebrating now, the holiday of Hanukkah, Peshat. This guy named Judah the Maccabee got together these warriors, and after 3 years of fighting from 167 to 164 BCE, they were able to successfully push the Greek Syrian occupying forces out of the holy city of Jerusalem. Amen. Okay, that's the Peshat. And that's what we give thanks to God for. Now, the remez. What is really hinted at here? There's something more that's going on here. And it has to do with, well, there is this legend about a little bit of oil lasting for 8 days. Now, what that is all about and what that means begins to raise various kinds of questions. Is it simply candles, or does light mean something else? And so the drash then begins to say, well, the light represents the light of freedom, that the Maccabees were able to secure and light the darkness, which is enslavement and oppression and dictatorship and the loss of one's freedom in life, which of course the Jews were experiencing then. And then the sod then moves to the next level, which is the spiritual connection. Because when we now, all of us, when we light the lights on our menorah, not only are we lighting a menorah in this dimension, but the Kabbalah, which I'll talk about another session, says that we are actually in multiple dimensions at the same time. And in the spiritual worlds, we are affecting the light that brightens up the darkness of all of existence, of the hatred and the evil in our world, in this world, and in the other worlds or dimensions, in order to change in order to create a tikkun, a repairing of the dysfunction of our world and making it functioning again. So everything has a connection. And this Rabbi Akiva said you can read every single verse in the Torah, understand every single ritual in these multiple ways. So we then move forward, of course, to the fall with the holiday of Sukkot. Sukkot is the fall harvest festival. It's also similar to to Passover, is celebrated for an entire week. Why? Well, because in biblical times, during Passover and Sukkot, all of the males of ancient Israel were required to bring an offering to the temple in Jerusalem of an animal or grain or fruits or vegetables or some kind of an offering to the holy temple in Jerusalem. They had 8 days to do it. If you gave them 1 day, that's not fair.
So they didn't have to do that for,
Shavuot? No. Now, according to some of the scholars and the historians, is that imagine almost 250,000 people would go to the holy city during Passover week, bring their paschal lamb. The word paschal means springtime lamb, one of the lambs to offer to God, to give thanks to God for the fact that baby lambs are being born. And it's a new season, it's a new life. 250,000. Yeah. And then Sukkot also, other offerings, they had 8 weeks to do that. So Sukkot celebrates the fall harvest, but also celebrates or observes the wanderings of our ancestors from slavery to freedom as they lived. The tradition is, the belief is, that they lived in Sukkot in booths as they wandered in the desert. And of course, they had to call them tents, call them whatever you want to call them. They had to have something to protect them from the heat of the sun, obviously, as well as sandstorms and all of those kind of things. So notice how all of these things then teach us about history, teach us about life, but they also teach us on the level of the Daled, the spiritual, ethical, moral teachings, and the spiritual meanings, something much more. So let's take, for instance, the fall. You have Rosh Hashanah, 10 days later, Yom Kippur. 3 days later, you have Sukkot. And then 7 or 8 days later, you have Simchat Torah, thanking God for the Torah, and beginning our Torah study once again for the year. You can say, 4 separate days. Nice, okay. Maybe I'll go to one, maybe I'll go to the other, maybe I'll go to none, whatever. Okay. But on the other hand, the minute that you begin to move to another level of interpretation beyond the simple, you say, something, I got to go to all 4, because I am not going to be spiritually complete unless I attend all 4. Rosh Hashanah gives thanks to God for the creation of life and the universe and the world. Remember, 5,784 years ago, it goes back to either the first day of creation, according to tradition, not literally, the first day of creation, or the 6th day when God created the human being. So it's life, l'chaim. But guess what? You can live life and live in la-la land your entire life and just be you. And it's all about you. It's all about me. But guess what? Aside from the fact that you ain't gonna have many friends, okay, is no one's gonna like you, okay, no matter how you think. But on the other hand, guess what? Is that you're not going to accomplish that. You're going to be a nothing. You're going to just be a placeholder, okay, taking up space in life, taking away our air. So therefore, guess what? 10 days later, we spend 10 days evaluating life and how to live that life. So on Yom Kippur, we do that because it's not just a matter of being born and dying. It's like that wonderful poem some of you maybe heard. You can look it up if you had ever heard, called The Dash. Okay, on the gravestone marker, you have whatever the year the person was born, the dash in between the year they died. Well, the question is, what happens in between those two dates? Rosh Hashanah is the dates. Yom Kippur is what we fill in between. Okay, the most amazing, just go check on the most amazing tombstone, actually two most amazing gravestones I've ever seen. One was on Long Island. It was a woman's gefilte fish recipe. And I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's her dash. Okay, that's her dash, which is great. Okay, that's good. Okay, the whole thing was on the grave marker. Obviously, our kids said, "Bye, we want to share with everybody."
Did it start with first to fill the bathtub with water?
Yeah, but the most amazing one was in northern New Jersey. There was no name, no dates. All that was on it was a dollar sign. So either it was his children saying, "This is a very generous man," or "This guy was so cheap." Okay, I think the cheap thing probably because his kids getting back at him. But that's the dash. That's what he was.
That's
terrible.
very mean.
Yeah, very mean.
That's very mean.
Well, my
Maybe not.
sister-in-law's mother's tombstone has, instead of the menorah and the star, she has wine, not a wine glass, but
A wine decanter?
the decanter of wine.
Oh, yeah.
Because she liked to drink every.
Yeah. Right. My father had a bicycle on his, and Judy's mother had a tennis racket on hers. And there was a guy at the temple up north who couldn't stop smoking cigars, and he had a smoking cigar on his.
Okay, I'm still thinking about that diet. There's children, there's Shonda.
Yeah.
No,
So
generous. Generous.
Right.
They were saying generous.
right, Robert likes that in Thursday. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Okay. So then 3 days later, you have Sukkot. And Sukkot is referring back to the physical existence of and life of Rosh Hashanah. It's bringing us back again. And for the harvest and the fruits and the vegetables and the sukkah and welcoming people in and all of that, the outdoors. You're living life. You're giving thanks to God for it. And then at the end of Sukkot, we go back to the spiritual and going back to the roots of it all. That's our Torah. And that's how a year starts. So notice physical, spiritual, physical, spiritual. It's all in one. And therefore, when you begin to see Jewish existence and these holidays on their different levels, the simplest, the meaning, the teachings, and then how it connects us to something greater than us, you begin really to see what Jewish life is all about. So take, for instance, the holiday of Purim. Purim is celebrated in March, usually, and it is an observance of the book in the Bible called the Book of Esther. So I'm sure all of you are familiar somewhat with Purim, right? Maybe Lolita's not, but anyway, Purim is the story, of course, of Esther and Mordecai and how they ultimately are able to secure the freedom of the Jewish people living in Persia at that time, hundreds of thousands of years ago, from the evil guy whose name was Haman, who wanted to kill all the Jews, right? Who wanted to kill all the Jews. But that's the Peshat, that's the simple level. But as you begin to understand it, and if I were to say to you that probably the story never happens, probably just a story. And why? Because we have no record in any history book of anything like this happening in the Persian Empire, which of course today is Iran. Never anything like that. There's never any recording of a Mordecai and Esther and a Haman. Oh, there's a lot of people who wanted to kill us, but these things never happened as such. So then the question is, do you get rid of it? No, because then there's the Drash. There's the more internal meaning. This is really the story of the Jewish people. Because, yeah, maybe there was no Haman and Mordecai and all that. However, there have been time and time again with people wanting to destroy us, kill us, but we were able to fight back, stand up for our Judaism, and secure our future. And so even the holiday of Purim is able to teach us lessons about life, about being Jewish. Obviously, every holiday has its what? Foods, except Yom Kippur. Okay. Although I guess you could say the break fast. I guess the break fast is the food.
We also need our heroes.
Yeah, and the heroes.
So I don't care if Esther really wasn't a real person. I believe in her.
Well, because we have many of them. Every single generation has our heroes.
Yeah,
Exactly. These yeah, and heroines, of course. But we also certainly have our foods. But a food is not only a food, obviously, but they all mean something. So take, for instance, on the holiday of Purim, the main item is what? The Hamantash. Okay, a triangular cake is usually filling inside. What does that mean? Well, one of the traditions is they represent Haman's hat. Supposedly Haman had the triangular hat, and that represents his hat. I don't know. No one took a picture of a Haman since he never even existed. So the question is, did he actually have a hat that way? But on the other hand, and some of you heard me say this last year and went, ooh, this is disgusting. In the story of Purim, a story of Esther, Haman, who's the evil guy in the story, Lolita, he comes back to his wife and says things are not going very well for him because where he planned to kill all the Jews, he now has to honor the Jewish man whose name was Mordecai. And his wife becomes so angry with him, she smacks him on his ears, and his ears blow up into triangles. And you might say, Hannah, how do you know that, Rabbi? And that is because the Hebrew Humantaschen is an Eastern European word. Taschen is Polish, German, whatever, for cake, and it's actually not a Hamantaschen, it's a Muntaschen. Mun are poppy seeds, and that was one of the traditional fillings of a taschen, of a cake. It's a Muntaschen, a moon cake, okay? Not a moon cake, that's another thing. That's a right, but a moon cake. However, in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for the Humantaschen is Moznei Haman, Haman's ears. Okay. Now, however, I want to ask you, if this is Haman's ears, what is the filling? Earwax.
What is?
Earwax.
Earwax.
Change that tradition.
Yeah, change that traditional idea.
Let's go back to that.
Where's brains?
So anyway, everything has a meaning. So let's take, for instance, the latke of Hanukkah, obviously. Obviously, of course, you're supposed to eat something with oil. So Ashkenazic or Eastern European Jews will eat potato latkes, which is particular for that period. I mean, certainly German have them. They have potato pancakes. Kochel or whatever. Yeah, potato pancakes, a very common dish. And of course, Eastern European, Sephardic Jews or Mediterranean Jews, they have the jelly donuts. Okay, so we all have our foods.
Why oil?
Because the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days.
Back to the oil and the menorah.
Exactly.
Back to the fake story.
Yeah. Well, we don't really know if it's fake or not. We don't know about whether it happened or not. But when it's interesting, for those of you who were there on Friday night, there's that one paragraph that Lynn read so beautifully. That's the only prayer about Hanukkah in the daily prayer service during the whole week here. And it says that when they re-entered the dedicated temple in Jerusalem, they lit lights. It doesn't say how many or whatever. It simply says they lit lights. I actually was listening to one teacher this week, and the teacher said it's not actually the eternal light, it's a 7-branch menorah that they were lighting. Interestingly enough. Okay.
That reading is in our Siddur. There are other readings in other Siddurim that are quite dissimilar.
Yeah. And then you get into all kinds of, then of course, like Lynn was saying before about the burial of the dishes, is that you get all kinds of discussions in Jewish tradition about what does all of this mean, because it's so general, it's so vague. So I actually found out something very interesting. In this rabbi didn't quote the source, and maybe he did in the Talmud, and that is one tradition is you light one candle every single night for 8 days. Okay, that's one tradition. Another tradition is you go like we do, you put it in from right to left, you light from left to right. However, you only light one menorah for your entire family. However, apparently there's a Sephardic tradition, maybe some of you follow this also, that every person in the house lights a menorah. So there's no right way or wrong way. It's what? It's the way that you were obviously brought up. But I never heard that one of it ever actually lighting one candle every single night and not having the whole menorah.
Light one light for the children.
Yeah, that's on.
The basis
Yeah,
one line.
interesting. So there are all of these, what? There are all of these variations. But again, what is the purpose of all of these holidays? It is what?
To
It is
get presents.
observing tradition, obviously,
Mhm.
tradition,
Keep
fiddle
us
on the roof,
together.
keep us going. But also it is what? It is connecting us with our people, connecting us with God. Every one of these has the simple meaning and the more the teaching meaning for our lives, as well as the spiritual meaning for all of them on different kinds of levels. And that's the power of Judaism. And what makes it really much more than just a religion, it's a culture, it's a people. And this becomes very, very important for us.
So that's the thing with the food.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I was in the Ukraine, on the bike, no, wasn't, yeah, I was on the Ukraine on the bike ride from Auschwitz to Poland, actually, from Auschwitz to Krakow. And that Saturday,
That's
there
cool.
was a presentation in one of there's actually 7 synagogues in Krakow. 3 of them are still functioning. It's absolutely amazing. And there are like 40,000 Jews back in Poland again, which is crazy. Okay. And there was a debate on Saturday afternoon. They opened the synagogue up, the morning prayers, but that afternoon, the synagogue was open. And there was a debate, actually Deborah Lipstadt, some of you might have heard of her. She's a great scholar. I think she's actually appointed by the President of the United States to deal with anti-Semitism in the world and whatnot. And I forget who the other person was. And they were going to have a debate as to which is the most genuine symbol of the Jewish people in terms of food, the latke or the humintashen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very funny. Yeah, it was really very funny. Yeah,
Team Latka, right?
Yeah.
All the way.
I like them both.
yeah, I like them both at different times, obviously.
Yeah.
But this is why the meanings of all of these different holidays and the foods are so very, very important, because it does what? It has the way of tying us all together. But to say the least, what I've shared with you today, and some of it you know already, is only the very surface. All of these observances become very, very complicated, to say the least. Yeah. And the question becomes then, on what level would you want to observe, or any of us, right? What are we doing now, and can we change later? And become more observant by what we learn. Something takes on more meaning. It makes sense to us, like Hannah was saying before. I will show, probably not next time, but toward the end, the last session, there's a ritual called putting on tefillin, which is these boxes on the arm. I'll show that to you. And by the way, anyone who wants to come to our tefillin experience next Thursday morning at 9:30, the 21st, men and women are invited. Remember, it's called tefillin, herring, and schnapps. And if you're interested,
What a combo.
yeah, for those of you who don't have tefillin, I have some extra pairs. For those who do, bring them. And we're gonna put tefillin on, do a abbreviated morning service, and we're gonna, of course, eat.
Excuse me, Rabbi. It's
Who's
me,
speaking?
Andy.
Oh, hi, Andy.
Do women put on tefillin? I've never seen that.
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, there's no place that says a woman cannot. It's just not the tradition in Orthodox. However, in conservative and reform, women can put on tefillin and do.
Wow.
Have I
Never saw it.
one of these at Rosh Chodesh at the hotel with the women's group?
Oh, yeah, Rosh Chodesh, yeah, they put on. Lolita, you had a question?
No, not yet.
Your box lit up there.
Rabbi,
Ah,
quick little story. My Robert that I live with, he is
You're
not
who? Oh, you're
into
Robert.
religion.
Robert.
Yeah,
He's
he's
a
not
rabbi.
into religion. He's not. he
born
feels religion
conservative.
is causing all the problems of the world, and he's not into religion. So when we moved into our house in Boynton, his cousin, who is very religious, she said, "I'm going to have the rabbi come and put the mezuzah on." Well, the rabbi came and he put all everything around Robert, the plate, what did he call it? The filling, everything. And Robert stood there and didn't move. He let him do everything. And I was in shock. and because he loves his cousin, and he didn't want to make a, to do in front of the rabbi. And then the rabbi left, and he left it on for a while, and then he took it off. But he was very good about it, and I wish I'd taken. I think I have a picture somewhere, because nobody would believe that he would let anybody do that. It was funny.
Rabbi, what is the thing on your forehead? Isn't it?
It's also-
Part of
yeah,
it's a-
it's part of it.
Well-
It says when we
When
get
we get home,
here
Shema.
to
Yeah.
the.
Third eye.
between
Well-
the father and the son.
Ah,
Yeah,
Give me
With
the
your hat.
two parts, right
It
behind
says
you.
Right in the eye.
your arm and your forehead.
Yeah, between your eyes. The father and son.
what is it
And
called?
the sign,
The-
upon
the-
the
the-
eye.
The roach.
The door.
A roach, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
What is it
Yeah,
called?
roach, which means
Roach.
head.
Oh,
This is,
These are the eye.
I have no idea what shape these are in, because they're not mine. Let's see.
Aha.
Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna do it today, why not? You're asking the question. Okay,
I think Lola might have had a question.
no, she said no.
Oh, okay.
So the question becomes, in the V'ahavta prayer, remember, the Torah was written thousands of years before there were any rabbis. And remember, the Torah was written while the temple, either the first temple or the second temple in Jerusalem still stood. And the whole system of worship of God was a cultic, C-U-L-T-I-C, cultic system, where the Kohen, the priest, presented one's prayers before God. And therefore the individual could not offer a prayer to God. You had to go through an intermediary. Okay? So similar to obviously the Catholic Church today is modeled after the ancient temple in Jerusalem, so that a Catholic cannot do communion on their own. They can't eat the wafer and the wine and drink the wine on by themselves in the room at home. They have to go through a priest, a Kohen. The same thing with forgiveness of sin. A Catholic cannot simply ask God to forgive them of sin. They have to go to confession and be absolved or whatever by a priest. That is a cultic system. Judaism was a cultic system until the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70 of the Common Era. I talked about that.
The second?
Second temple. So the rabbis sitting around actually way before the temple was destroyed, because maybe they realized what could be happening, they had to reinvent Judaism. And they had to create rituals and ceremonies that would capture and be able to capture the need to communicate and be with God without having to go through a Kohen. So in the Torah, of course, you all know, twice there's in the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of the Torah, there is the prayer of the Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then the second paragraph after that, the V'ahavta, you shall love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your soul and mind. And you command them, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a frontlets or a symbol or something or other between your eyes. So the rabbis looked at these words and said, what is this? Okay, there were ancient peoples who would engrave or tattoo the word or names of God on their body. So you shall inscribe the word of God on your arm. Okay, V'ahavta says on your arm, and between your forehead, put God's name on your forehead. Okay, you're done. But the rabbi said, no, we're against tattooing, number one. We're not supposed to desecrate the body with markings, because that's what pagans or non-Jews would do, or Gentiles would do in those days. However, so what are we going to do with this? Because everything in the Torah has a peshat, a simple meaning, and leads us to higher spiritual levels. So the rabbis, in their infinite genius, create these rituals and ceremonies. So they created this ritual that is called tefillin. You have here 2 boxes. Okay, one of them is going to go on the arm and the other on the head in a morning ritual. So it's sort of like, I don't know how many of you charge your cell phones up. Okay, we charge them obviously before we go to sleep at night. Well, this is the way of charging up our spiritual plugging in the morning. Because after all, when you guys wake up in the morning, how many of you are thinking about God? How many of you are thinking about being a decent and good human being today, that day? Not many people do. So this is a ritual by which one does. Now, first of all, you could say, well, can I go to the bathroom first? Yes. Can I have my coffee first? Although some Orthodox rabbis might disagree, others say, yes, you can have your coffee first. Okay. So anyway, there are two versions of these boxes, and I'll explain to you why. But this version is for people who are right-handed. There's another version for people who are left-handed. I'll explain that as to why in a minute. So, first of all, in order to put on tefillin, aside from wearing a yarmulke, now, why do Jews wear yarmulkes? And by the way, men wear a yarmulke, but women can wear a yarmulke as well. Or a woman who is Orthodox wears a what? A wig, a shidel. Okay. You're wearing something over your head. And why? To remind us that there is a God above us. That's the purpose of this. So, this is called a talit. In the book of Numbers, it says very specifically that you shall wear a garment, and on the four corners of the garment, you will have a fringe that is made of the heat of techelet, a blue color.
Ink from a mollusk that you cannot eat.
From a snail.
Oh.
They make the blue color, this blue comes supposedly, I think it does, hopefully it does, because I spent enough money on these fringes, comes from a snail. And actually, according to what Lynn said, the murex snail, they take the guts out of the snail and they put it in boiling water. And at first it's green, icky green, and then turns blue. So they're pretty sure that this is the techelet that's mentioned in the Bible.
I never knew that.
So therefore, this goes on like so. Sorry, it goes on. Now, you might say, and it says in the book of Numbers that you'll have four fringes, and as you look at these fringes, you'll think about God. Now, you look at this. Why would you think about God? Okay, why? Because the number of knots and windings are equivalent to the Hebrew letters Adonai Hu Echad, the Lord is one. So if you know the code that it's equal to in the Hebrew letters, because every Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, etc. So the Hebrew letters Adonai Hu Echad have a numerical equivalent. The number of knots and windings on the fringe are equal to the letters of Adonai Hu Echad, the Lord is one, which is why you think of that. However, there are actually 36 different ways of doing these knots. And there's actually, I was told, and someone actually saw this person, there is a Kabbalist, a Jewish mystic in Jerusalem, who said, who knows which is the correct way of doing the knots. So he wears 36 taluses at the same time.
Oh my God.
He probably walks like this. Now, now going back to our, how am I doing time here? What's the time? 20th, okay. Going back to the original discussion about keeping kosher, is that there are, who are you doing these rituals for? Who are you doing the ceremonies for? Who are you celebrating for? Some of them, like a Passover Seder, for your family, for people you invite. However, in terms of your spiritual life, it's between you and God, right? It's between you and God. So, for instance, I am wearing now also a talit underneath my shirt, which when I wear a regular shirt, and I wear this, and you now know it, but I don't wear it out. You might have seen Orthodox Jews wearing it out. And I've been doing this now for about 30 years. Okay. And because why? It's meaningful to me. When I put this on the morning over my t-shirt, it's a way of again connecting with God. I don't need anyone to see this. I don't have to wear it out. I'm not Orthodox, obviously, to say the least. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'll wear, and obviously I don't keep kosher out. I mean, I don't eat non-kosher if I can help it, but I mean, obviously I eat regular food. And so I still am wearing this.
Also?
Yeah, no, I don't wear it, no. No. But the fact is, it's all my relationship with God, which I'll talk about another time.
What you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But take, for instance, now I'm wearing two taluses. This one only in the morning. This one, when I have a regular button down, if I'm wearing a collared, let's say golf shirt, I don't wear that because I guess it just doesn't, it's not going to fit right. It's too cumbersome. Okay. It's only when I wear a regular shirt or Friday nights when I'm tie. So On this one, you have 4 fringes. And they represent the 4 directions of the world and telling us God is one. So now in the morning when one wakes up, and by the way, any of the women here who want to do this can do this. You don't have to be a male to do it. And I'm going to put this on my arm. So put the one on the arm first. In this box, in this box are 4, this box there is 1 piece of parchment, animal skin, just like a Torah. Now imagine a scribe writing on such a small little thing, the V'ahavta prayer, the Shema, the V'ahavta prayer, and 2 other paragraphs.
Wow.
Which describe God's relationship to the people of Israel and what we are required to do to get God's blessings. Okay, amazing. And I did have a setup north. Actually, I opened the boxes up to use it to show you where the parchment is. There's 1 piece of parchment in this box with the 4 paragraphs on it. Now it goes like this. And you go like that. You tighten it up. Now, you'll notice here that there's a little notch. Okay, I'll explain what that is in a minute. And the box has to be pointing in toward the heart or to his chest. And then one wraps it. There are variations on all of these things, but you wrap it around the forearm 7 times. 3, 4, 5, 6. Tradition. Okay. And the way to do this on the hand, there are many different traditions. If you were to Google putting on tefillin or go to YouTube, you can see a lot of this stuff. Now, in this little box, there are 4 pieces of parchment. They separate the 4 paragraphs into 4 pieces of parchment on this one. Oh, by the way, and the pieces of parchment are written on, don't get grossed out, fetus skin. Calf fetus.
Good to know.
The look in your face.
Because it can't be very big. I mean, you can't have a whole big calf and cover into little teeny pieces.
You have to have
Sometimes less is
1
more.
hell of a handwriting
Now-
to do.
Oh, yeah. Most of these guys are blind or the glasses like out here. Now, everything of the tefillin, just like everything on the Torah, is natural, obviously. Wood, obviously. This is animal muscle, the same thing that ties together the pages of a Torah. So this must go on the forehead, as opposed, this is not mine, so it's not going to necessarily fit me properly. But it would go, yes, too small for me. You heard about the couple that was debating about what they're going to name their kid. And so they went to the rabbi and they said, well, what do you suggest, Rabbi? So the rabbi said, oh, you don't know what name the kid? Pick his name out of a hat. So they named the kid 7 3/4.
That's so bad.
Okay, I'm
So
going
bad.
to add to that. As a new member of the Temple Square family,
But it's funny again.
our custodian, one of our custodians became a grandfather again last evening.
Oh.
His new granddaughter's name is
7.
Seva. Oh, no, it's 7. I'm
It's
sorry.
7, S-E-V-Y-n,
Oh,
It's
7?
7.
okay.
because it's his 7th grandchild.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, but
And the other was, and the one before that was 6 and 5. Okay. So anyway, it's supposed to go just where the hairline is, approximately. Obviously, for a male who's bald, it's got to be somewhere around here. Okay. Because people are going further back. No, it's just to be somewhere around this part here, right about here. You can see the line there. And then over tall man, pointer finger, whatever you want to call this finger, which I will not show you. You're going to wrap it around 3 times like this, and then you finish it off like that.
Coffee's
And
cold
and
today.
and what?
Yeah.
And the
Coffee
tefillin
is cold.
stays on while you're praying in the morning. And if you go to synagogue, you put it on, and during the service, or if you're home, you put it on. I wear this every day. You do not put on tefillin on Saturday, because Saturday or Shabbos or holidays, you're tied in already to the holiness of the day. What I'm doing is I'm attaching myself to the kedusha, to the holiness of God. Now, why all of this? 3 little prongs here, like the Hebrew letter Shin. This is like the Hebrew letter Daled, and this is like the Hebrew letter Yud. Shin, Daled, Yud spells God's name Shaddai, God, the all-protecting God who watches over us. Also, this is the same Shin, Daled, Yud that you would find on a mezuzah. That means Shomer de Latot Yisrael, he who watches the household of Israel. So everything of this has meaning. Okay, and it stays on, obviously, while one prays. This is a little too loose for me. And there actually are 4 other versions of tefillin. There's this tefillin, the way it was developed here, is called a tefillin of Rashi, one of the great commentators to the Torah. But Rashi's grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, disagreed with his grandfather rather, as to the order of the paragraphs in this box. Rashi said it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the way you lay it out. And Rabbeinu Tam, his grandson, said, no, Grandpa, it's 1, 2, 4, 3. So there are some people, including myself, I put on a second pair of tefillin in the morning, which has the other paragraphs, because the question is, what does God want? What is the real tradition?
What happened to the mitzvah of honoring your father and grandfather?
You can you can disagree. And then the other version, there are actually 2 other versions, because the question is, who are you wearing the tefillin for, yourself or for God? So there's actually 2 other sets of tefillin by the Rabbi, who was the Rabbi Abraham ben David, and also Shemura Rabbah, another set of tefillin, which are the mirror images of these paragraphs. Yeah.
It could be a lot easier to put the prayers on a piece of paper, put it in your pocket, and then.
But this
Right.
becomes, well, but this is the point here, obviously, is what? This is a way of the genius of the rabbis of charging one's spiritual bodies in the morning when you wake up, which is a time when you're least thinking of any of this whatsoever. And I certainly, when I grew up completely ultra reform, I never even heard of this. My rabbi, Reformed Judaism, they never taught any of this stuff. And they never even alluded to it or taught it. And I never heard about it all until I got to rabbinical school. And then I started putting on rabbinical school, which is now almost over 50 years. I've been doing this every single day, except you don't put it on Shabbat, as I said, or holidays. Now there is
Now, which holiday?
all holidays. No, well, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shavuot, Purim and Hanukkah, you can put it on.
Okay.
Because they're not considered holidays at all, they're just days,
Mm.
special days. And so, anyway, this ritual, what does it mean? If it takes on, as a Reformed Jew, and a modern Jew, we were able to say, something, this sounds interesting, Rabbi, maybe you can help me to figure out how to do this, and actually, maybe I'll do this. I do this on my own, I go to synagogue, I put this on. I mean, if you can go to around here, there are lots of synagogues you can go to every single day and join a morning minyan. You want to make that a part of your life. They keep on asking me to go to Anshe Shalom, and I can't do that because it messes up my whole day. Driving over there and my whole schedule, it just wouldn't work. But the fact is, because they have to have a minimum of 10 people in order to say certain prayers. And so for Kaddish especially, which is unfortunate or fortunate. However, the fact is that when I started putting this on, all of a sudden it had meaning to me. And I put on 2 fasts to fill in. And I began to learn about this and find this very fascinating, even as a modern Jew, and I'm still a modern Jew, obviously. The same thing with the undergarment that I showed you. And that's the beauty of Judaism, and that to me is what's the beauty of being Reformed. Because if you're a serious Reformed Jew, everything is possible and nothing's impossible, whatever it is. Yes, let's stop.
Our rabbi asked me if either my son or son-in-law would like my husband to go in. And I talked with the young men at that time. They weren't boys. Neither did. And it was suggested I bury the tefillin with him. Is that just minhag?
I feel you're not allowed to bury tefillin with a person.
And
You're not allowed to.
somebody suggested it, and the rabbi told me no. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, because you don't want to make the dead person jealous, because since he's dead, he can't put the
Somebody said
tefillin
to
on
me,
anymore.
"Oh, put it in the casket." And
You bury it like you would the book.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
what-
yes.
I don't need it.
what there's a special prayer to do when you do the tefillin?
Oh, yeah, there are numerous prayers when you're putting them on. There are also meditations before the prayers.
So how long does this take in the morning
Well, to put the stuff on,
to do the prayer? I'm just
Well,
curious.
depends how much, you mean me personally? It depends how much time I have. I have a short version, which takes me 20 minutes, and I have a longer version, which takes me 45 minutes. And it depends upon, and I have a numerous prayer books also that I use, different ones. Some of them are more complicated in terms of meditative practices and things.
And the
So-
week.
So
Where
the-
do you get that to fill in? A store, like Traditions
Well,
or
you
something?
probably you can buy tefillin on Amazon, of course, because you buy everything on Amazon. Of course. However, you would go to a Judaica store. I mean, if I was back in Long Island, there's places we could all go to in Brooklyn, to say the least, or 5 towns in Woodmere and Cedars. Here, I have no idea. However, to give you an idea, tefillin today, a set of tefillin would cost anywhere between probably $500 to $600 and a couple of $1,000. And it all depends upon the quality of the scribe writing the tefillin. And also to say is that, as I mentioned, there's righty tefillin and lefty tefillin. And the lefty tefillin, the box goes on the right arm, and so that notch with the yud is facing inward also. And the reason why, if you're a lefty, it has to do with what, and I don't want to get too gross here, but you're not allowed to put the tefillin on the arm that you use to wipe yourself when you go to the bathroom. And therefore lefties would use that hand and the righties would use that hand. And you're not allowed to use that arm to put God's name on. And obviously you're not allowed to wear tefillin or a tallis if you go to the bathroom, to say the least.
And that's why there is a book.
Perfectly reasonable.
That's why there's racks, yeah.
So we did a lot today. Okay, so for next time, we're going to start at the life cycle. So in the other book, okay, this one here, actually learned a lot about me today. In this book here, we're going to read the chapters. First of all, there's a whole section on mitzvahs, a whole part of it. But actually just read the sections that are dealing with birth and Jewish education and marriage. We're going to do death customs will be the last one, because that'd take a whole class.
So, should we do the ones on mitzvah?
Education and
Yeah,
marriage.
mitzvah. Yeah, let's see. In this book here,
I ordered 2 books. I got one. I didn't get the other one.
Betty, if you're sending an email, are you sending an email?
Yeah, I need
Can
to
you
take,
send it?
hold on a second, I need to take down what you're.
okay. Section 5, what is mitzvah? It's pages 85 through 135. And then going back in the book, section 1, birth and childhood, section 2, education, and 3, marriage. That would be page 3 through 42.
I'm sorry, one more time.
3 through 42
Okay. pages
and 85 through 135.
And what book is that?
That would be navigating the journey, the essential guide to Jewish life cycle.
And when is the
And that was
service?
section 3.
Next Tuesday,
Thursday
morning, the 21st at 9:30.
Did you say 85 to 100?
And we are having herring
Said
and
85 to
Herring.
135.
Herring.
Was that section 3?
Not lots of it,
No, herring and
Because
schnapps.
in navigating.
Emphasis.
and it goes to
Bagel tree.
and well, actually, when you said what was the things? Umantashin or
Oh,
Latkes?
latkes?
I was gonna say bagel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have said chosen bagel.
where that comes from.
How about
Okay, everyone,
All right,
shalom.
thank you.
Section 3 by any chance?
What?
Was there last section on 85 to 135? Is that section 3?
Yeah, 5.
5, section 5.
I will.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Steve.
Still 85 to
Bye,
135.
Lolita.
Bye, shalom.
Shalom.
First one was 3 to 44.
Didn't it belong to didn't that belong to John F. Kennedy?
Section 1 and 2.
Ago, I brought my son.
And then birth, education, and marriage.
And I sat
That's
in
3 to
that rocking
42?
chair.
Yeah,
And they
okay.
went in and I.
Section 5,
Oh, that's
85
it?
to 135.
Nursing him?
Goodbye, Andy.
Bye, Doreen.
What's the name of the book? Is
Oh, okay.
Navigating the Journey.
Yeah, I hope I get that book. I wonder why it
Invite the mother and the baby up to the bima.
depends where they come from.
And so
you
I
know,
called
sometimes they get
so-and-so's
everything the
name.
same
She was in the
day.
back of the sanctuary.
It's amazing.
So I didn't see what's going on. She was nursing. So she then brings the baby up while she's still nursing up to the bima. And normally I put my hand on the baby's head to bless the baby. You're wearing a rush, I put my hand.
Yeah. Tricky,
That was
tricky.
really a tough, that was tough. I handled myself well.
Oh, please tell me there's video.
Oh, God. You know what I want to borrow? I was gonna borrow a Bible.
That's
That's what I was gonna borrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Well,
Yes, I know, my hand's finally warmed up.
Thank you, everyone.